All right, Trump's pick, as you heard there, to lead Homeland Security, Markwayne Mullin, grilled by Senate Democrats on Capitol Hill earlier during his confirmation hearing as DHS, Homeland Security, remains unfunded by open border Democrats. So this is a very important hearing. It wasn't just Democrats that had words for Mullen. Senator Rand Paul, who chairs the committee, the Republican, confronted Mullen with an old beef, comments that Mullen made after Rand Paul's neighbor attacked him years ago. Take a listen.
You told the media that I was a freaking snake and that you completely understood why I had been assaulted. I was shocked that you would justify and celebrate this violent assault. You have never had the courage to look me in the eye and tell me that the assault was justified. Tell it to my face. If that's what you believe, tell it to me today. Tell the world why you believe I deserve to be assaulted. And while you're at it, explain to the American public why they should trust a man with anger issues.
I'm very blunt and direct to the point, and if I have something to say, I'll say it directly to your face. I work around this room to try to fix problems. I've worked with many people in this room. Seems like you fight Republicans more than you work with us. So for you to say I'm a liar, sir, that's not accurate.
And Senator Rand Paul joins us now. And, sir, it's good to have you here. I want to start. Things got pretty heated in there between you and Mullen. I think that's, kind of strange because I feel like you're mostly aligned on Homeland Security and on a secure border. Am I wrong in that?
Well, I think the one thing from your introduction that wasn't accurate was that this was years ago that he said this. This was a couple of weeks ago. So a couple of weeks ago, he brought up what happened to me years ago and said, I can understand how, someone would want to assault him. Well, during the assault, I had 6 ribs broken. 3 of them snapped completely in half, rubbing together for months on end. My lung was damaged, multiple pneumonias, ended up having to have part of my lung removed. So I guess I don't take it kindly when someone says, oh, yeah, you kind of got what you deserved. Well, he can hardly expect me to be supporting his candidacy when he seems to be justifying the political violence that happened to me. But it's more than that. He got involved with a brawl in a Senate committee. He threatened to jump over the dais, said that people deserved to be smashed and punched in the mouth. And then a couple days later, when he was asked whether he would reject any of that, he said, well, we've had dueling and caning for a long time, and these are things we do in the Senate. Well, those things have been illegal for 170 years. They were illegal when most of the duels happened. They were illegal. Most civilized people were not for that. So I wonder, with his anger issues and his justification of violence, whether or not he's the best person or would set the best example for our ICE agents and Border Patrol agents.
Yeah, you're a no on Mullen. I can understand that. I'm trying to think about his ideology as far as protecting the country and Homeland Security. But I understand what you're saying there, and I get your point. And good clarification on, he said it a couple weeks ago, but it's in reference to an attack on you that was from years ago. But can I guess my question is, do you think he'd be bad? Is it just that temperance that you believe that he'd be bad at the job? Because I think the president thinks he'd be a very good person to actually secure and keep the country safe.
Well, see, what I worry about is when you're in charge of, like, you're chief of police or you're in charge of the federal immigration police, they need to see an example from you. For example, Tom Homan went to Minneapolis, and you know what he did? He cleaned things up very quickly, but he said, any ICE agents that misbehave will be punished. Right. And, all of a sudden we're seeing less bad behavior. You need a tough cop like that and somebody who actually will lead with moral authority. But if you're the guy that's going to be in charge of ICE, and you think brawling is okay, and you casually say, well, the good old days when men were men, when we had duels and canings. I mean, I reminded him that Charles Sumner was caned nearly to death. He was beaten senseless, blood coming out of his mouth and his ears. He was unconscious. His colleague came over and with a gun threatened the other senators to stay back and not help. Yeah. And he kept pummeling him with this big cane while he was unconscious. And somehow, Markwayne Mullin thinks that's a historical precedent for why we sometimes have to use violence in the Senate. That's completely inexcusable. It should, make him unfit in anybody's mind to lead ICE and CBP.
You said that the behavior of ICE agents improved, after they put Homan in Minneapolis. What behavior did you think was so out of line? I mean, when I look back at the instances of the killings in Minneapolis, I saw a young man that was attacking their vehicles, kicking out the taillight of one of their vehicles, obviously somebody that was aggressive towards them in just the days prior to his death. I also saw, if you see the full video of the woman, she was clearly blocking the road, a hindrance for a while, and then drove at an officer that was standing in front of the vehicle. Where was the behavior that you think was where do you think they were wrong?
We brought the head of ICE and the head of Border Patrol to the Senate. We asked them some questions. They didn't want to answer specific questions about, the very well publicized deaths that happened, but they did answer some general questions. So we asked, if an ICE agent is about 2 or 3 feet from someone who's yelling at them, is it appropriate for the ICE agent to lunge into their face and spray them from a couple inches away with pepper spray in the face or in the eyes? And ICE and CBP said that wasn't part of their procedure. So a lot of the things that were happening weren't. Where Homan fixed a lot of it is he took them out of the streets. You had so many people in the streets trying to do crowd control, which is very difficult for local police or anybody else.
Right.
And I think that by pulling them back away from contact, you haven't seen it in the news lately, have you?
Right.
So Tom Homan must have done something right. But my fear is someone like Markwayne Mullin, who glorifies violence, will send the wrong message to ICE and CBP.
Yeah. Homan did a great job of, you're right, putting that, away from the front page and cutting that deal so that ICE could go straight to the jails, which that was a great capitulation from I think, from both sides to make a deal there and get this off the front page.
Right.
I want to get your reaction. I know your position on the Iran war. I want to get your reaction to the resignation of Joe Kent, which has been paraded around a lot by opponents of the war, claiming that Israel dragged us into it, saying that Iran was not an imminent threat to the country. I think some old comments and tweets from him show that he certainly knew that Iran was a threat. Your position on this and the war after 2.5 weeks?
Joe Kent served 11 combat tours in the Middle East. His wife died in combat. So I think he's earned his right to have his opinion and to put it forward. On whether or not Iran was an imminent threat, for 20 some odd years, people have been saying they're a week away from a nuclear weapon. So I think there is an argument to be made that the imminence of this might have been overstated, that yes, of course, no one wants them to have a nuclear weapon, but how imminent they are, I don't know, 6 months ago, the Trump administration told us they obliterated their nuclear potential. So did they obliterate it, or are they 1 week away? So I think people use arguments to justify actions, but I didn't see Iran being 1 week away from a nuclear weapon, nor did I see a threat to our actual country from Iran.
Real quick before I let you go, you were never that harsh on the idea of the Obama nuclear deal, the JCPOA. You said that sometimes you need to make negotiations like this. If you were running the country, what would you do with Iran? Would you actually try to make a deal that they wouldn't subvert, or would you continue to mow the lawn, or whatever it is we're doing right now, or what we've done in the past?
I think diplomacy is not easy, and you're dealing with people that, if you're having to do diplomacy, you're dealing with people that, by the very nature of it, you may well not trust whether they're making a deal. I can tell you that the military actions against Iran have weakened them and brought them to the table more. So I think there actually was room for a deal. They were at the table, and by many accounts, were capitulating on most of the things that America was asking for.
But do you think
there was a
stick to
possibility
it?
of the deal.
You think they'd actually do it?
That is a real question anytime you make a deal.
Yeah.
Well, it's sort of like, it's a question you would ask at the end of the World War II. We didn't have a whole lot of love lost for the Japanese then. We didn't necessarily trust them.
Yeah.
They were fighting kamikaze missions against us.
Right.
And yet, in the end, we did accept. They did capitulate, and we accepted. But, it took a lot to get unconditional surrender. It took two nuclear bombs on big cities. So when people say that we're going to have unconditional surrender from Iran, they have to realize that that's not going to come easily, and that may be something that would last years and years and need a civil war and need tens of thousands of soldiers on the ground.
Got to leave it there. Senator Paul, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everybody's reporting the same stories, the same spin. You turn the channel, it's always the same. But not us. We're different. We report the real news. No spin, just the facts. Turn to us, and you won't turn back.
Tune in to Rob Schmitt Tonight on Newsmax.